The Osirion is the equivalent of an 8-story building situated entirely below ground, with water flooding its interior in ways that were envisioned and controlled by the architects. This is part 6 of my series on the Osirion, and in this episode we're going to just summarise all the things that we've found so far about the Osirion. So let's start with what the archaeologists think about this site. Standard archaeological thought seems to be that the Osirion was built at the same time or slightly before the Seti temple by Seti I. It seems that some archaeologists might be a little bit more open-minded on that subject, however, as is indicated by the following quote by James Westerman. Without the advantage of contemporary benchmarks, dating the Osirion is complicated. Architecturally, it is Old Kingdom design. The Osirion had to have been built before the adjoining Seti temple, because it is founded so deep that the hole it rests in would have extended well into the site of the Seti temple during construction. Perhaps this is one reason the Seti temple has its unique L shape. As for what the Osirion was for, archaeologists can speculate. Here is another quote from James Westerman. We still don't know why the Osirion was built. Is the Osirion a temple of worship, a testament to a god, the tomb of a god, or maybe the tomb of a king? Did it serve several of these purposes, or some other purpose entirely? And I think the best summary of what the archaeologists think of the site is from ancient architects.
As a subterranean part of the temple complex of 19th dynasty king Seti I, Egyptologists say it was built around 1290 BC, and that it is likely it was never completed.
And now we're just going to look at some of the key points that have been raised by ancient architects.
Interestingly, the seismic equipment also recorded voids or cavities inside the central island. There appears to be an angled hole which follows a true north direction. This crude entrance is the only way in or out, apart from one treasure hunter's tunnel in the northern end of the eastern wall.
And now we're going to find out what independent researcher Brian Forster thinks of this site.
But obviously this is pre-dynastic masterpiece that was built on purpose underground, and then when Seti I found it, he built his building next to it. Now let's get a few quick clips from Johanna of Funny Old World.
And you can see that there is like a sort of middle island, which is sandstone, and then huge single cut, one big old piece granite block pillars. So we've got granite blocks. What's missing today is the roof, which also would have been made by these huge megalithic granite blocks. Sandstone base and sandstone sort of side walls, and then the actual enclosure is limestone.
So that was a great summary. Now let's have a look at a few key points that Johanna has made about this site.
This is going to blow your mind. So in this diagram, see here, you've got a little person and you've got the huge granite blocks, and that is the current floor level that you can walk around today when you visit. But the inner island measures with seismic technology, they have calculated it to be 15 meters. There is not a solid foundation to the Osirion. The Osirion is built on water saturated sand.
So it's deep, very deep. Now let's check out some key points from Megalithomania.
Some interesting features including the flower of lives, the mortise and tenon joints, and the evidence of ancient technology. You kind of see evidence of the puffy polygonal stonework. You've got like drill holes, core drills. You've got the seams which you can't even fit a credit card or a banknote between. You've got the polygonal areas, you've got these nubs. That is just like the cornering, the exact style you find in Peru. It's like this is the same builders.
Well, that was a whole series of important points. So let's see if there's anything else.
Not only do we find the nubs, we find the protrusions, the indentations, mortise and tenon joints on top of them, but also the angles and the very small stones that are kind of linking up the corners. There are remarkable resemblances to Stonehenge with this site. So, and we know there were Egyptian connections with Britain.
We're covering a lot of ground here, but let's just keep on going and find out what Ben of Uncharted X has to say.
You can see the shift in the stone, like there's been a gap.
The reason for the stones shifting and the gaps and like that little bit where that corner is broken off there, there's good reason for that, and it's all about earthquakes. And here's a few more clips from Uncharted X.
It's an island. Like, you're literally looking at, even zoom out a bit further, this whole thing's an island built on top of an aquifer that's 5 or 6 stories tall, made from granite. But it's inset slightly, like it's like this inset that runs around the edge of this. I'll even zoom out a bit more.
We know that whoever built the Osirion could make little inset blocks that are incredibly well fitting. We see many examples of this in the quartzite walls that make up the Osirion itself. And in fact, there are a couple of places where there are little inset blocks that just fit perfectly.
And just a few more clips from various independent researchers like The Land of Chem and Bright Insight.
Osirion was absolutely intended for people to go inside. Very different than the pyramids themselves. The chamber itself, permeated with electric fields and echoing, reverberating ultrasound.
Look at these various cut marks and how they closely resemble, as you now see here, from Cusco, Peru.
That Seti is cutting in his temple, and he comes across the Osirion, this part of the Osirion, probably ruinous, maybe that's conjecture, and then he decides to skew his old temple around and maybe reconstruct here. There's a lot of open questions here, but it's next to inconceivable given how the Egyptians built their temples. I mean, they built them in all kinds of different ways, but never ever did they cut one into the ground.
The ceiling panels and all these alcoves, if you look at them, when they get to the wall, they do this.
Oh yeah, they bend.
So the ceiling is 3 inches higher than the wall part of the ceiling panel.
The more superior is the oldest.
So that's basically it for the summary of clips from independent researchers. I still have 2 more episodes to put out with regarding very specific aspects of the Osirion, and one is the doorways of the Osirion, and the other is the sealed tomb of Osiris, which is towards one end of the Osirion. And then, and only then, can I pull it all together and give you the final episode where I will give you in detail my theories with regards the megalithic Osirion.